Hi everyone, my name is Matt Difanis, broker owner of RE/MAX Realty Associates with offices in Champaign, Mahomet, and Monticello, Illinois. I'm coming to you today with a spring market update for sellers. How can you tell that it's my spring market update? Because I am dressed like an Easter egg. So the reason I wanted to do this update is every year I have sellers who get surprised by how our market season, peak season, plays out. And so I want to show you exactly what that looks like. I've prepared a graph that shows 2018's activity month by month for the entire year, showing you both the number of pending sales per month. That reflects listings that went from active to under contract, or put differently, when did buyers actually make purchase decisions and sign contracts on them. So the pending sales are reflected with the green line, and then closings by month for our entire metro area are reflected in that white line. So what you can see there is people get surprised how early in the season things really get very busy. Now, every year is a little bit different, but 2018 was fairly typical in terms of the seasonal distribution, and I expect 2019 will be similar. So let's look at those 2018 numbers. You'll see that buyer activity jumped way up from January, February to March. It actually peaked. It hit its highest point in March for buyers signing sales contracts, which seems really early in the year. But it wasn't like a 1 month spike and then shot right back down, but rather it spiked and peaked in March and then stayed more or less at a plateau for the next couple of months. That is very typical. I tell folks every year March is our ramp up month. Some years we don't have that as our busiest month. Last year, obviously, we did for buyers signing contracts. And then buyer activity in general stays at a very, very high level, runs full throttle all the way through April, all the way through May, and then it will start to drop off pretty quickly once you get into the first half of June. Now, what drives that, and most importantly, what do you need to do if you're a seller this year? Well, in our Champaign-Urbana metro area, our lease calendar, and of course there's tens of thousands of those leases in our community, those tend to run July 31st to July 31st. Even if you're in an upscale price range, there's a good chance that somebody buying your house may be selling their house to somebody who's on a typical lease calendar. So people getting out of leases July 31st is one big driver. The other big driver, which runs just a few days later than that, is school registration deadline. So if you're moving someplace and you want to be settled in time to register kids for school, that is also going to happen while we're still in the summer, typically sometime early in August. So if you work backward from there, you figure most buyers are needing to be settled by late July, and typically, now, you can do this shorter or longer, but typically 45 days is the most common contract to closing time frame. So if you're working backward, that means you've got to be under contract by early to mid-June at the very latest if you're going to close before you get to the end of the month of July. And then, of course, you've got people who are ready to move into the community or into their new homes earlier in the season, or are in a position where they want to move into one, take their time to move out, and then sell the other one. And those are earlier season people. Well, also, if you get a seller who's got a vacant property and would prefer a sooner closing, a buyer who doesn't have to be moved until July may still say, well, that's fine, I'll agree to a May closing date because I can close in May and not have my first house payment until July. And so I would only have 1 month of overlapping rent and home mortgage payments. So when you think about all of that, hopefully that helps to make sense of why so much of our demand for the whole year is concentrated into March, April, May, and then by June, which still feels like the early part of the summer, the season is quickly ending, the doors quickly closing on you if you are a seller. So if you're selling this year, what does this mean for you? First and foremost, hit the market as soon as possible if you're not already on today. If you're in a really mainstream market segment, a segment where there's not a lot of competition and where there's really strong demand, you may be totally fine hitting the market anytime in May. That's a little late in the season, starts to get me a little nervous, but you may do fine selling, in a week, even in the later part of the peak season, because it is still peak season. But what if you are somebody who's got either a more expensive home where it takes longer to find the right buyer and there's more options for those buyers to choose from, or it's a more unusual home? In either of those cases, it becomes more important that you're on the market early in the season, because the more unusual the property is, the less likely I am to be able to find clones to tell you here is exactly what your home is worth. Well, if I can't find clones to tell you exactly what buyers paid for the very same thing, it becomes more of an educated guess. We are still going to do our homework. We're still going to treat it as a serious research project, but pricing becomes more an art than a science. So we're going to make an educated guess on pricing, but if the market tells us it needs to be reduced, that is, if you get the market exposure that you need and you're either getting showings with no buyers or you're getting a lot of online views but no one doing showings, if the market is telling you you need to reduce the price, you have to be on the market early enough to be able to reduce the price and still have some peak season remaining for that price reduction to do its job, which is turn heads and get attention and affect a sale once you've got that new price. So think about it. If you're one of those folks with a more unusual house, you really want to be on the market by early April, because if you need to do a price adjustment, you want to do that no later than early May so that you've still got a full month of peak season to be able to get the attention of buyers still in the market. What you do not want to do is join the too little too late club, and I have people join that club every year at the end of June or in July. And what does that mean? It means they realize after the peak season has already ended, not coming close to an end, already done, and they're realizing only then, oh yeah, I guess it's time for a price reduction. Well, even the best marketing in the world can't overcome the fact that most of the buyers have left the marketplace by then. And so that's what I mean, too little too late. They go ahead and reduce the price and often end up selling off season lower than what they could have easily sold for if they had just done the price adjustment earlier while we still had some weeks remaining in peak season. So I hope this gives you a sense of how our market works from a timing standpoint, gives you a little bit of a distinction between the really mainstream affordable stuff versus the higher end stuff that our market has to offer. Of course, every situation, every home is different. I look forward to the opportunity to consult with you individually, as would any of the members of my team. Don't hesitate to reach out to me by telephone, email, or text message anytime. So this has been your spring market update for sellers. And again, my name is Matt Difanis with RE/MAX Realty Associates.